you. The purpose of today's workshop is really twofold. One is to emphasize the importance of closing the loop and writing your results reports, and maybe highlighting a couple ways in which, as a whole, those have fallen short a little. So we want to refocus attention on those. And then number two, to go over the new process for submitting these reports that will now happen outside of Nuventiv in a similar way to what you did with the 22-23 plans. But now we're looking at the results from this year and how you all can submit those to us as we sort of continue our drift possibly away from Nuventiv. So Allie's going to talk a little bit about the systems we've set up for that. Obviously, we've been affected by the ransomware attack just like everyone else. So we have limited access still to, no access, I should say, to our shared drives. That will be the last thing restored, and we have a lot of stuff in there. So hopefully those will be available today or by the end of the week is what they're telling us. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Are you seeing the right thing? Okay, good. All right, so what we're specifically talking about are results from this year, though the beginning of the presentation is more big picture about results reporting in general and kind of why we do that, how we want to do that, and I'll be highlighting a few changes that we've made to the way we report results in the new process that we've created to try to make it a little more specific and high quality when you give us those results. So just a reminder, this is where closing the loop happens. That part, when we say that, we really mean this part where you're analyzing your results, you're identifying improvements or just actions, even if you don't want to call them improvements, you're implementing those actions, and then you start the process over again. So as a university, over the past few years, even before I got here, we have emphasized the first part of the circle a lot, articulating outcomes, planning those assessments, and collecting that data. And we've gotten pretty good at that. We have good outcomes, generally good assessments planned for the most part. We're collecting that data. This closing the loop part has gotten less emphasis from my office and just in general. So that kind of has fallen short a little, also disrupted by COVID and everything else going on in the world. So it's been a little hard to keep that consistency. So now we're trying to emphasize a little bit more of this closing the loop part. We feel like y'all have decent plans, but now we need to follow, what are we going to do once we have that information, and just maybe articulating that more clearly. Like you might be doing it, but it's not showing up in the results reports in the way that is obvious to others. So just, I know many of you know this, but just a couple of reminders of why we do this. I know the first thing that comes to your mind is SAC-COC is making us, which is of course partially true. But these are sort of the more philosophical reasons that we do that. So we analyze those results so that we can help ourselves identify strengths and areas of improvement in all sorts of aspects of our program. Maybe that's curriculum, maybe it's course design, maybe it's teaching, maybe it's policies, maybe it's student support, but we're looking for ways that we can continuously take action or at least have the conversation about how our students are achieving those outcomes or not. Writing the actual report, so a lot of this happens anyway, whether or not my office asked you to do it. What we're asking you to do is articulate that in a report that clearly connects your outcomes, your results, and actions that you take as a program. So just the act of writing that report helps you make those connections, and it helps you demonstrate that you're making those connections. So a lot of times those things happen informally on a day-to-day basis in our department meetings and conversations with colleagues. What we're asking you to do is to document it in a form. And then lastly, obviously, collecting these reports helps us demonstrate our commitment to continuous improvement, not just to SAC-COC, but internally to the leaders of the institution as well, and to our students and to others. But really what we're trying to do is draw those connections between, this is what we say we want our students to learn, here's the evidence that we collect about that, and here's how we act on it. and drawing those connections across those three things. So I'm going to go over some components of the results report. So we have created a new results report that is a Word version of many of the things that you used to put in Nuventive. So similar to the plans that we asked you to submit in February, the results report will be a Word form in which you are entering your results for this year. And Allie's going to go over the specifics of that process a little bit after I go over these components. So some of these components will be exactly the same as many of them are exactly the same as they were in Nuventive. We just hope it'll be a little more obvious to draw those connections when it's in more of a narrative form. So the first question will be whether your target that you set for the assessment was met, partially met, or not met. You also selected that in Nuventive, but it'll be a little drop down on your Word form. And just a few reminders about the target. One is that it was set by you. So you can set whatever target you feel is appropriate and what you would like students to achieve on that assessment or what indicates a level of success. It's perfectly okay if you do not meet the target or the target is partially met. So this process, assessment of student learning, is less about demonstrating how wonderful you are and more about having meaningful, constructive conversations about what students are not learning and where they're having issues and where they have strengths. So sometimes it can feel like we're asking you to report it because we want to see that everybody is meeting it. That's actually not the point. To be honest, we don't care if you're meeting it or not meeting it. We care that you know that and that you're having a conversation about it and that you're doing something about it if it's not met or partially met. So really what we want you to do is demonstrate that you're thinking about those things and having conversations about it. So here's something that I've been kind of like thinking about a lot. Number one question that we get is, what do we do if the target is met? Because how do we make an action if we are doing an awesome job and everything is fine? If it's met, you are still expected to provide your results and your reflective analysis. So you at least need to tell us what you found and what you think that means. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. I wanted to share with you some actions that you might take if the target was met. So sometimes you might want to reassess again to see if the results that you got are consistent. Sometimes you might want to identify a new or additional measure for the outcome, like maybe you just need to measure it in a different way and see if you get similar results. Maybe you want to increase or revise your target. Maybe you say, oh, well, before we thought we could get 80%, maybe we should actually be aiming for more for like 90% of students get X, Y, Z. Or maybe you want to revise the outcome to be more rigorous. So maybe, again, you're kind of aiming too low, right? Like maybe there's a more rigorous outcome that's farther up on the learning scale that helps you get students to a higher level. Maybe you can aim for that. So that being said, we do want to, I will share with you when we get to the actions part that there is a space for you to not take an action and explain why you did not take an action. That's a big change. Because we understand that there might be situations where that's just not possible. Yes, Jackie, we'll send it out and we're actually recording this as well. Okay. So the next thing, which is exactly as it was in Nuventive, is a summary of your results. These are, you don't need to read these now. When we send you the slides, you can read those, but these are real life examples from some of your colleagues who have agreed that we can share it. They are not perfect, but they are decent examples of what we're going for. It's really just a few sentences about what you found. So this can be pretty simple and straightforward. This is how we evaluated, this is what we got. I wanted to show you two examples where they sort of reference their targets, which is helpful when you're describing your results, but it's pretty straightforward. It's literally just, this is what we found. For the reflective analysis, this can be sometimes the more challenging part. This is the part where you actually have to think deeply and talk to your colleagues and figure out what's going on. Really, this is like an exploration. So this is, here's why we think we might have gotten these results. Here's what's notable about them. This is sort of like the discussion section of your article, right? It's like, this is what I found. Now we're going to bring in some other information to talk about what this means. And really, ideally, these are generated not just by one person. It's by you having a conversation with the folks teaching the class or your colleagues in the department, or however you want to go about that. That's why we try to build in that time in the pre-semester calendar for you to have those discussions before you report the results. So this can really look however you want it to look. Again, these are, you don't need to read these now, but these are a couple real life examples from your colleagues. I included these two because they are very different. The one example A is a good example of an analysis that goes from an overall result to what we might think of as an item analysis. So they had a target on an overall assessment, and I think they met it. But then in the analysis, what they did was they looked at specific components of how students were being evaluated, and they found that there was one area where students all scored lower. And so now that kind of points them to where they can indicate an action. Example B is a much different example because they are actually pointing to something that has nothing to do with their target. So they met their target as well, but what they realized was a high percentage of students didn't even turn in the assignment. And for them, that was the most notable thing was, hey, we're assigning this assignment and the students that do it do great, but like a quarter of them aren't even turning it in. That's a notable thing. So they want to think about how can we address that. So it's okay if the analysis kind of skews away from the results that you got, as long as you're kind of taking that into account. And don't hesitate to bring in outside information. So maybe the context is, oh, students had to do this other thing this semester, or the instructor asked them to do something that isn't related to the assignment that you've assessed. So this can be a place that you bring in those other contextual factors or even other data that you might have about how students performed to help you make sense of what you're seeing. So this is sort of the big change from the Nuventive form to the form that we're going to be giving you in Word. Before, with the actions in Nuventive, we just had like one little box and you could say whatever you wanted in there about the action that you plan to take. We did ask you for the type of action, and that was a drop down. In the Word form that Allie's going to show you, we're going to ask for more detail about the action. This is more of the form that I'm used to because it makes you think more specifically about the action that you're going to take. So you'll be indicating the type of action. So maybe it's a curricular change, teaching change, policy change, assessment change, whatever that is. That's a drop down. You're still going to give a little description of it. But then we're also asking for, when do you think you're going to make this change? When's your planned implementation date? Which can just be a semester. You know, it could be like fall 23 or whenever you think you're going to implement it. The individual or individuals responsible. So that could be as vague as all faculty teaching this course, but it could also be something more specific if there's something else, you know, that one person is going to work on. And then when the outcome will be reassessed. So the point of taking actions or making improvements is that you're trying to improve something. So ideally you are reassessing this outcome sometime in the future, and you're going to see if some of those changes you make have made an impact. Now, obviously, this is not a clinical trial or a randomized experiment. So there are other factors there, but the point is that you are implementing something and then you're continuing to assess that outcome again in the future. Then, as I mentioned earlier, if you are not planning actions, there may be a very good reason for that. So we want you to select no if you're not going to take an action, and then explain why that is. So there could be a variety of reasons that might happen. It may be that the faculty member who taught that course left, right? Like that could be a thing. It could be that you're going to revise all of your curriculum, or you're redoing all your outcomes next year because you're changing something significant about the program. There could be a lot of reasons that you don't take an action. what the issue with the system that we have now is that we have no space for you to explain that. We're basically forcing you into an action, and there is no sort of like other item that you can select to explain why you might not do that. For our purposes, it's just important that we keep track of those that aren't implementing an action and why. Because those explanations are usually perfectly fine. It's just that we need to know what they are. So that Allie will show you this, how it looks within the form, but I just wanted to show you, this is kind of like, this is what the section will look like in the Word form. So here, the first question is, are you going to implement actions or not based on these results? This is where if you were going to choose no, you would choose no, and then it asks you to provide a rationale. If you choose yes, which we hope many of you will do, that here's, I can't show you on the screenshot, but you would select the type of action, and there is an other, I believe. Then you would describe it. So here is an example that was sort of related to one of the other examples that we showed you. And then the date of implementation, who's responsible. I have a typo, sorry about that. And then when we will reassess the outcome. So those are the details we'll be asking for. Okay, so I just wanted to throw this in here because we look at a lot of these reports. A few reasons you might have a hard time identifying actions. These aren't the only reasons, but they are a few sort of stumbling blocks that make it hard to figure out what to do with the results. One is that the measure might not actually give you good information about the outcome that you're measuring. It could just be that it's not detailed enough. It could be that something has changed about that assessment method. You know, sometimes the exam changes or the project changes and it's no longer clearly aligned with the outcome, but there's some disconnect between the measure and what you're measuring. Another reason is that maybe you're just kind of, you're looking at the big picture with the analysis of your results and not getting down into that item analysis. So maybe your target is that 80% of students will score X on an exam. And if you just look at that overall number, then you might have a hard time identifying where to take steps. This is sort of like one of the examples that I showed you. But if you look at an item analysis of every question on that exam, or how students performed on different elements of a rubric, you might find one that students consistently do well, and maybe another one that students consistently do less well on. So maybe digging a little more into the specifics of the results that you've collected in that analysis. One might be that you're sort of looking at that result in a vacuum and hoping that it just speaks to you. It probably won't, because none of this happens in a vacuum, right? Like this is a human messy process where there's a lot of other factors. So it's perfectly okay, as I said earlier, in that analysis to talk about things that aren't just the measure. You might want to bring in other thoughts to help you decide what it is you want to do with this information. One of them might be that the outcome you're assessing isn't aligned with the course that you're gathering the data from. Again, that can happen for a lot of reasons. Like the curriculum develops over time and the outcome is from a few years ago, and now the course is actually different than it was when it was aligned with the outcome. Maybe someone different is teaching the course and they're not quite doing it the same way, and now it doesn't really speak to the outcome anymore. But those connections between where you're getting the information and the thing that you're trying to measure, sometimes those connections get broken over time. So it's worth kind of revisiting with the folks teaching that course. Hey, we're using this course to assess this outcome. Does it still work? Do you think it still works? And having those conversations. Lastly, sometimes the people teaching the courses aligned with the outcome aren't directly involved in the assessment process for a variety of reasons, right? They might be part-time faculty. It might be that you have an assessment coordinator in the department and that person is just doing the work themselves and there isn't opportunities for a lot of conversation. You're going to have a hard time identifying actions if the people teaching the courses involved aren't having that conversation with you. So that's something that's harder to implement. I get that, but it might be something for you to think about and maybe talk about as a program about how to address that moving forward. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Allie, but I will pause here and see if there's any questions about that part before she shows you the new process.
I'll ask one. Can you hear me?
Sure.
Yeah, sorry. I had a student in here right at the beginning of the meeting, so I might have missed this. But so don't even worry about Nuventive anymore.
For the moment, yes.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure. Thank
We're
you.
hoping that's permanent, Terry.
Okay.
And that's what we're going for. So yes,
Okay.
don't worry about it.
I apologize if you said that at the beginning.
No, yeah, it's totally fine. And I mean, I will say it's still available. So you can go in there and get what you need. If you want, I mean, there's nothing stopping you from using it, obviously, to look at previous plans. But for this process, you don't have to worry about it.
Thank you.
Sure. All right, Ellen?
All right, so as we just said, Nuventive is still available, but not what we will be using for this process moving forward as of now. So we are actually going to utilize Microsoft Teams for this process. If you are familiar with Teams, this should be very user-friendly to you. If you're not, we're more than happy to walk through it with you. I'm going to show you right now where you can locate the team and how you can go through this process. But what we really want it to be is kind of a one-stop shop for you. If you could navigate Nuventive, you will have no problem navigating Teams. It's much more straightforward, much more user-friendly. Nuventive is great in some ways, but it is very clunky with this process. So we're trying to make this your one-stop shop. We are going to provide all of your plans for this 2021-22 cycle within Microsoft Teams. So I'll show you where you can locate those and what they will look like. Brandy and I were just finishing up pulling all of those from Nuventive, getting ready to transfer them into Teams, and then the ransomware attack happened. So they are just sitting on our shared drive right now, but eventually we will get those moved over into Teams once we can access our shared drive. So the idea is that you can go into Teams, find everything you need for this process there. If you need to go back into Nuventive for anything, of course it's still available, but we want to make it as streamlined as possible. So once we get this all set up in Teams, we will add all of our assessment coordinators, our deans, and our associate deans into that team. So you don't have access to it right now. If you're trying to get into your Teams and find it, you're not going to find it yet. Once we get that all set up, we'll add everybody to that and we'll send out a notification to let you know that it's available. And this is what we're going to use from this point forward. So when we do our next cycle, that's going to live in here as well. And we'll maintain everything moving forward by IE cycle. So you can always go back and find previous plans and reports. So we will have those templates available for you. I'm going to show you the template in just a moment. Those will be available on our website and also within the team, so you can find it in multiple places. We're asking that you complete your results reports and have them submitted in Teams by September 15th. So I think that's a little later than we usually do, Amanda, is that right? Before, I think we had them due like right at the start of the semester, and y'all have so many other things going on right at the start of the semester. So we wanted to kind of update the schedule to make it a little more friendly to what you all have going on within your departments and colleges. So September 15th is the deadline. And of course, we'll send out reminders for all of that once it gets close. So I do want to kind of show you the process. So Amanda, I can share my screen now if you want to hand that over to me. So I'm just going to share this entire screen here. Can everyone see that? Okay, so when you log into Teams, this little menu over here on the left, now I have a Mac, so yours might look a little different, I'm not sure. But you want to select this icon here that says Teams. That will show you all of your teams. Of course, your teams may look different from mine, depending on what you have access to. And you want to select IE planning. Again, you don't have access to it yet, but you will once we have this all set up. So when you go into the IE planning team, it defaults to the discussion board here. We don't have anything in there now. We may be able to post things in there in the future. I would ask, just make sure you don't mute this, just in case we post important reminders or things like that. What you're going to be interested in is right here, the files. So when you click on files, for now, we only have one folder in here for the 2021-22 IE planning cycle. Eventually, there will be more for as we move forward with these cycles. We'll have the 22-23 and so on. But for now, we just have this one. So you'll click on that. And I've tried to make it as straightforward as I possibly can. So find your unit IE plans here. So this is where you will go to find those plans that I mentioned that we pulled from Nuventive. So you can go in here. We have it separated by degree programs and then non-degree units. You all are obviously the degree programs. That will include certificates as well. And then we have it further separated by college. That way you just don't have to scroll through all of the different plans that we have. So once we get these set up, you can click on your college. You see we don't have any files in there yet because they are still on the shared drive, but it will populate in here and you can just scroll through, find the plan or plans for your unit or degrees, and you can download them. You can access them right here within Teams, however works best for you. I would recommend downloading a copy just so you can have one on file. And just so you can see, this is what that plan will look like. We're downloading these in Word form to make it easier so that you can copy and paste if needed, but this is directly from Nuventive that we're downloading. So when you scroll down, like I just got this one from management just to show you what it looks like. It shows you what the student learning outcome is, which is right here. It shows you the method that you had, the target, all of that is right there available for you. Sorry, let me move this over here. Thank you, Dr. McConnell. So then once you access that, that plan, you can go back here into this planning cycle, just follow your little breadcrumbs there. And this is where you upload your results reports. So once you have that template filled out, I'll show you the template in just a moment. Once you have that filled out, you'll upload it here. Again, we have it by degree programs, non-degree units. You'll want to go to degree programs. And then once again, we have it by college. So just go into the appropriate college and you'll upload it. We do have a naming convention that is on the template itself. So just make sure when you're saving this that you're following that appropriate naming convention. And that way we can scroll through and easily see who has submitted and who hasn't. We'll also have all of the any supplemental materials you may need. So you may be wondering, well, did we submit a plan for this particular degree or certificate program? You can find that right here, units with 2021-22 plans submitted. And like I said, you can either download that or you can click on it and Teams will pull it up within the system. It looks a little funky right now, I'm not sure why, but you can pull it up right there. It may be because I'm sharing my screen. So you can pull that up right there and go through to see what you have. Okay, any questions about the Teams setup? Feel free to unmute and ask.
Where's the template, Allie? Is it in there somewhere?
So it will be eventually. So this is the template here. This is what it looks like. Yes, the step-by-step handout. I tried to include that. Again, I'm trying to make it as user-friendly as possible. So I've actually gone through and filled this out for our office as well to make sure that it works. But of course, I know that it can always be better. So if you have suggestions, if when you're working through this, something doesn't seem intuitive to you, please reach out to me and we can maybe incorporate that in the future. So this will give you the step-by-step instructions, first on how to access your plan within Teams, which I just went over, and then also how to upload that results report to Microsoft Teams. And we will email this template to you. We'll have it on our website. We'll have it within Teams. We have it in multiple places for you to access. I would ask that you just make sure that when you do get it, make sure that it says degree and certificate programs up here at the top. We have 3 different templates based on the type of unit that is reporting results. And so you want to make sure that yours is degree and certificate programs. So anywhere that you see a gray box on here means that you need to fill in some information there. That's kind of an easy way for you to see where to put the information and what needs to be completed. If it's something that doesn't apply to your area, you can always just put not applicable or not available or whatever. So some of this, like I said, you can copy and paste directly over from your plan, the outcome name, the outcome description, any of that. When you get to things like this that say, please select, all you have to do is click on that. You'll have a drop down here and you can just select which one works best for you. It's exactly the same as it was in Nuventive. We have the same options there for you to use. As Amanda mentioned before, this is where you would indicate if it was met, not met, or partially met. All you do is click on the box that's appropriate and it will highlight that for you. So this is the part that she mentioned that is a little bit different. The planned actions based on results and next steps. This is where you select, will your unit be implementing actions? Yes or no. If it's no, you only need to fill in this gray box right here. If it's yes, then you'll need to fill in the rest here. All right. Now for this, we're trying to streamline it a little bit more just to make it easier on the committee to review, to make it a little more straightforward for you, and to make everything more, I guess, alike. So what we are asking, we know that you have a lot of outcomes that you assess on an annual basis or on some sort of cycle, and that's great. We're not asking you to stop doing that, but for our purposes, we only need reports for 2 outcomes. So on your plan, you may have submitted more than 2. That's totally fine. Just select 2 of those that you want to provide these results for, and that's all we need. You'll also see that we only have areas on here for 2 assessment measures. Again, if you had an outcome that had more than 2 assessment measures, just select the 2 of those that you want to report on here and provide them. You can maintain that assessment within your own department and use it for your own purposes. But for this, we only need 2 outcomes and 2 measures per outcome. Does that make sense? Yes, Tim.
So for HHP, we have outcomes per concentration. So
Yes.
that I'll have 2 per concentration. So I'm still going to be submitting more than 2, right? Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's right.
Yeah, that's a good point that I wanted to mention. We did that with the plans for next year as well, but in the past, we've really emphasized that you have to have a plan at the degree level, and that is still somewhat true, but this new process gives more flexibility. So if there is a concentration specific set of outcomes or concentration specific measures that you want to do, that just honestly, it just creates more work for you. And you have to submit more forms, but there are other programs, Tim, not just you all, that do want to do that and they just haven't been able to. So feel free to submit by concentration if that makes more sense for your program.
Thank you. A follow-up too, if that's okay. So I get results in from faculty throughout the year. So if they complete the assessment, they send me the results and I load it into Nuventive. So we're partially complete for 21-22. And my question is, moving forward, so 22-23, is the results section of Teams going to be open all year round, where I could just dump all that stuff in when I get it, so I don't have to wait until September for our pre-semester retreat? I can. Okay, good. Thank you.
Yes, once you have access to Teams, you'll continue to have access, and we won't hide anything or move anything. So it'll be available just like Nuventive. You can access it anytime.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
You're
we'll
welcome.
make sure that by next year we have at least that year built out. I guess
Okay.
that's what I'm saying, the 22-23 year.
Any other questions or anything else that I can walk through to show you that would be helpful? And we know that once you get started, it may all seem very straightforward and logical here. And then once you get into the process, it gets a little swirly. So if that's the case, please reach out to us. Brandy is available to help you with if you need just some training on how to use Teams. I know not everybody is as familiar with Teams as we are, so she can walk you through how to use that. And then if you ever need anyone added to the team, it's a very simple process. Just send us an email. You can email Brandy or Amanda or myself, and we can add somebody very easily. So if you have somebody that moves into the assessment coordinator role for your department, or if you need somebody else added, just let us know and we can get them in there. It's a much more easy process than it was with Nuventive.
I'll just add that as we look toward the fall, we will probably have some version of this, even though this is recorded, we'll have some version of this sometime during the pre-semester calendar, now known as the faculty conference and annual meeting. For those that want to drop in and ask us questions, or if you need us to come to a meeting, a department meeting or a program meeting, one of us is happy to do that to walk you through the process, or if you need a one-on-one training in the fall. But once we get to August, you'll be hearing from us again, for sure. But in the meantime, this is available, and we're available over the summer if you need us. And I just want to thank Allie for putting all this together, and Brandy for assisting her. It's not been a small lift, so we're hoping, and we do want feedback, so please let us know if something's weird or funky or it isn't working the way that it's supposed to. It's a work in process. All right, well, thanks everybody. We will send this out and have it posted on the website.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Great day.